On a warm autumn afternoon in 1980, the town of Whitmore Falls came to a standstill. Mayor Charles Dunning, a respected leader and father of one, was last seen locking up his office with his 10-year-old daughter, Lily, at his side. They were supposed to attend a town hall meeting that evening, but they never showed. Their car wasn't found. There were no calls, no ransom notes, just silence. Panic spread fast through the small town. Search parties scoured the woods, questioned neighbors, even drained the lake on the town's edge. But days turned into weeks, then months, and eventually years. The mayor and his little girl had vanished without a single trace. Locals whispered theories. Some believed the mayor had uncovered something he wasn't supposed to. Others thought it was a planned escape from a secret scandal. The mystery became legend, a story told in hushed voices during storms and school field trips. Some said Lily's laughter could still be heard echoing near the church steps at dusk. But most just tried to forget. Then in 1988, the town's aging church closed. For years, due to structural damage, was scheduled for renovation. It had stood quietly through it all. A shadow in the center of Whitmore Falls, workers arrived with tools and scaffolding, ready to rebuild what time had worn down. But as they peeled away rotting wood beneath the sanctuary floor, they found something no one was prepared for. And suddenly, the town's darkest secret began to surface. The workers froze the moment they uncovered the space beneath the sanctuary floor. It wasn't just an old crawl space. There were bricks forming what looked like a sealed-off chamber. The lead contractor, unsure of what they were dealing with, called the sheriff's department. Within hours, the area was surrounded with tape, and flashlights bobbed around as deputies carefully began removing the bricks. Everyone in town heard the news. After 8 long years, Whitmore Falls held its breath once again. What they found was chilling. A rusted antique rocking chair sat alone in the center of the space, oddly untouched by time. On it, folded neatly, was a small blue cardigan one that matched the one Lily was last seen wearing. There was no sign of struggle, no remains, just the unsettling sense that someone had been there, and very deliberately left something behind. Investigators reopened the case, pulling old files from dusty shelves. People who hadn't been questioned in years were interviewed again. And while everyone remembered the mayor as a kind man devoted to his town, a few began to admit he'd been distant and worried in the weeks before he disappeared. One librarian mentioned he'd been checking out old town records documents tied to the church's land history as investigators dug deeper. A strange pattern emerged. Several properties in Whitmore Falls had once belonged to the same name, someone no one had spoken about in decades. And the church, it turned out, was built over one of those original plots. As the investigation continued, one name kept coming up in the old records: Elias Marlowe. He had owned several key plots in Whitmore Falls during the late 1800s, including the land where the church now stood. But what struck detectives as odd was how his name abruptly vanished from all town documents around 1901. Some whispered that Elias had been involved in strange rituals, while others believed he was simply erased after a land dispute. What made it even more unsettling was that the original church plans had no mention of a basement chamber. It was never supposed to be there. Meanwhile, Sarah Green, a local teacher and amateur historian, began digging into town archives on her own. She discovered an old diary written by the town's first priest. In the final pages, the entries became fragmented, talking about shadows under the altar, the loss of innocence, and the phrase "debt must be paid" repeated over and over. Sarah tried to bring it to the authorities, but most brushed it off as superstition. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling something had been buried deeper than just a secret. Back at the church, odd things started happening. Tools would go missing, cold drafts would blow through even when the doors were sealed, and one worker claimed to hear faint whispers from beneath the floorboards. Though many were skeptical, a few older residents began admitting they'd heard stories as kid stories they were told to forget. But now, those forgotten warnings seemed to be resurfacing with chilling clarity. The renovation crew grew uneasy. As they worked deeper into the old church, on the fifth morning, the lead carpenter refused to return after finding a sealed stone hatch under the pulpit. It was heavy, untouched for decades, and carved with strange initials, E.M. Sarah, still following her instincts, showed up with the mayor's old journal she had recently discovered in the town archives. The journal detailed a private meeting scheduled at the church on the very night the mayor and Lily vanished. No one had ever mentioned that meeting before, not even in police reports. One worker finally agreed to help open the hatch, as it groaned. Open, a stale breath of air pushed out from the darkness below. The chamber beneath was unlike anything they expected. It wasn't just a basement it looked like a hidden room designed with intention. Old wooden benches, a rusted chandelier, and scattered children's toys lay in the dust. And then, toward the far wall, something metallic caught the light. It was a nameplate. Everyone froze. Outside, word of the discovery spread fast. Locals who had stayed quiet for years began stepping forward. One older woman claimed her grandfather warned her never to enter the church alone. Another admitted she remembered a second set of bells ringing in the night all those years ago, but the town only had one steeple. With each new piece, Sarah and the team felt something bigger looming. The truth was close, but no one felt prepared for what they were about to uncover next. As Sarah stepped closer to the nameplate, she brushed away the dust and read it aloud. In honor of Elias Marlowe, Keeper of the Covenant. The words sent a cold ripple through the room. That name again? But what did Keeper of the Covenant mean? Just then, one of the workers uncovered a second hatch hidden beneath a collapsed bench, smaller and more secure. It was locked tight, with an old iron clasp, but engraved with a date October 17, 1980. The same day the mayor and Lily disappeared. The sheriff's team brought in a locksmith. When the hatch finally creaked open, the room fell completely silent. Inside was a small wooden box and several neatly folded documents. Sarah carefully picked up one of the pages. It was a town deed, signed by Mayor Dunning himself but dated 2 days after he was reported missing. Even stranger, there were fingerprints on the paper recent ones. This discovery flipped everything they thought they knew. If Charles Dunning signed this after vanishing, had he never actually left Whitmore Falls? Was he alive, hiding, or worse, being kept? Panic spread among the officials. The sealed room no longer felt like a burial site. It felt like a message. And just as they began reviewing the other papers, the church lights flickered, then went completely dark. In that moment, someone screamed from outside. A power line hadn't failed. Someone had cut it. It was clear now, whatever truth they were about to uncover, someone still didn't want it found. The moment the lights went out, the old church filled with a sharp, heavy silence. Flashlights flicked on, beams slicing through dust and shadows. The sheriff ordered everyone out, but Sarah stayed behind, clutching the documents. Something about the signature, the location, and the date didn't sit right. As the others cleared out, she flipped to the last page in the box and found a letter addressed to whoever finds this Q. We see this case on. We see this plays. Only Ruby Kiss has the luxurious texture that glides on smively and leaves a rich wan last quas, twas, / long last, keys, with / k / keyed. My / clash, k's / af. We are / qua. We are / qua. We / qua. We / pre-send, I lead sis. We are be-ray kade, by we lies. We side its by sidic ode. I may me silasic kakalasic excessits it's I sicket geset I lets it's a sick with the other says it's me kick it it's the cut lit It was written by Mayor Dunning. His tone was desperate, the writing shaky. He admitted he had uncovered a buried agreement between the town's founders and Elias Marlowe, an unspoken promise to protect the town in exchange for silence and land. But something had changed in 1980. Dunning had tried to break the deal. He wrote that he had planned to expose the truth during the town meeting, but that night he and Lily were taken by people he had trusted. In the letter, he revealed he and his daughter had been held beneath the church for days. He'd managed to hide her in a storage shaft, hoping someone would find her later. And then the final line, "If you found this, I pray she's still here. Follow the wall behind the plaque." Sarah rushed to the nameplate and pushed against the bricks. One shifted. Behind it, a small passage led into an unlit crawlspace. Heart-pounding, she crawled inside only to find an old child's shoe and a faded ribbon tangled in a lock of golden hair. But there was something else. Fresh footprints, small ones, leading deeper inside. Sarah followed the tiny footprints, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The narrow passage opened into a small stone-lined chamber hidden for decades. There, tucked in a corner, was a weathered wooden crate covered with a blanket. Inside it, carefully preserved, were Lily's belongings, her favorite book, a music box, and a drawing of her and her father. But it was the final object that stole Sarah's breath, a silver locket engraved with the initials LD. Inside was a photo of Lily, much older than the one in police reports, maybe 9 or 10. She had lived longer than anyone imagined. Authorities launched a full forensic investigation. DNA confirmed the items belonged to Lily. A second, smaller room nearby revealed skeletal remains believed to be Mayor Dunning. It appeared he had died protecting his daughter, sealing her in to keep her safe. She may have escaped later, but where she went remained a mystery.